Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news on George Stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. Tonight, we bring you compelling insights into the ongoing struggle for self-determination in Amazonia, a journey fraught with challenges as colonial surrogates seek to impose their will over a people yearning to chart their own path. In a blatant display of control, the colonial administration continues to undermine traditional and cultural autonomy, dictating how and when Amazonian heritage can be celebrated. This, despite the facet of decentralization and autonomy promised under the so-called special status, the action of the colonial regime reminds us of a deep issue: the persistent attempt to erode the identity and self-determination of the Amazonian people. Meanwhile, across the colonial divide in La Republic de Cameroon, the economic toll of the war in Amazonia is becoming painfully evident. Desperation has seeped into the corridors of the Colonial National Assembly, where new taxation measures are being rushed to sustain a war that continues to claim lives and deepen divisions. Instead of embracing dialogue and mediation as pathways to peace, the colonial regime appears committed to tightening its grip and prolonging the conflicts, further burdening its citizens to finance the senseless war. Tonight, we'll delve into these pressing issues and uncover the intricate layers of a conflict that continues to shape the lives and futures of millions. Stay tuned as we explore the developments behind these powers displayed and their application for Amazonia and beyond. But that's after the prime headlines. Here are the reports today for the prime headlines. We'll start with a report of fire destroying St. Luke's Church during Christ the King feast. Also tonight, we'll take a look at La Republic de Cameroon needing money at all costs to finance all of their evil deeds. Colonial Governor rubbishes House of Chiefs Halts planned Heritage Festival in Amazonia. Meanwhile, tragedy strikes the ÉCOLE PRIMAIRE d'Application, the KRIBI Center in Boya. Meanwhile, all the Africans seen opposition leader freed amid allegation of repression, while West unprepared for a large-scale war due to lack of ammunition stockpiles. Now, let's get the news in full briefings. The colonial governor in Bamenda has called the president of the House of Chiefs, the vice president of the region, to order for attempt to organize a heritage festival without colonial authorization. Well, according to the colonial governor, the vice president of the Colonial Regional Assembly has not respected the provisions of the colonial law and the provisions of the General Code on Religion and Regional and Local Authorities, on which its section 359, subsection 1, gives the power to the president of the Regional Assembly as the chief executive officer of the region. The colonial governor made this declaration that many consider an embarrassment to the much talked decentralization in a communique dated 27 November. The House of Chiefs in some colonial institution put in place by the colonial regime after the monologue in 2019 in the name of giving Ambazonia some degree of autonomy. The outing of the colonial governor putting a halt to an event planned by the House of Chiefs is a clear indication that Ambazonians are mere slaves and the colonial authorities in Ambazonia slave masters. Given that slaves had no power to make decisions, the colonial master stopped the planned Heritage Festival. In addition, all the different institutions from the charade in the name of major national dialogue, like the Colonial Regional Assembly under the so-called special status. The colonial communique is a slap to the faces of the custodians of the traditions who are members of the House of Chiefs and to the entire people of Amazonia. Now, this is what a resident in Bamenda has said. But is that even all? Well, fire has destroyed the St. Luke Church during Sunday's Christ the King feast. Well, this report says that a devastating fire has destroyed the St. Luke's Catholic Church in Tassin, a locality in Bamenda, the chief town of the Savannah Zone in the British Southern Cameroons. The incident, which occurred on the 24th of November, coincided with the Feast of the Christ the King, a significant day for the parishioners, leaving the faithfuls in shirking and mourning. The St. Luke Catholic Church in Tassin has been completely consumed by flames, leaving behind nothing but ashes. The fire broke out on Sunday afternoon while church members were attending celebration at the Metropolitan Cathedral in Big Marcon. Eyewitnesses' accounts suggest that the blaze started when the building was empty, but the exact cause remains unclear. At this point, we would wonder how people were in church before they went for the Christ the King feast. So, how did the fire start when the people were out? Is this natural? Well, we'll definitely continue to find out. Well, reports suggest that firefighters responded swiftly, but by the time they arrived, the fire had already spread extensively, making it impossible to salvage the structure. The church loss includes not only the building, but also valuable items such as furniture, sacred artifacts, and essential equipment. A church member expressed deep sorrow over the loss, stating, in quotes, "This is heartbreaking for all of us. We've lost our place of worship, but our faith is unshaken. We're trusting God to guide us through this tough time." Another member remarked on the challenges ahead, saying, "We are left with finding an alternative place of worship." This incident, in particularly, poignant for the Ambazonian community, which has faced ongoing hardship since the onset of the war in 2016. This incident adds to the list of sufferings of the Ambazonian people, widespread sufferings, including displacement, loss of livelihood, and the destruction of homes and places of worship. Having been the order of the day since La République du Cameroun waged a war against the British Southern Cameroons. Just a day before this incident, another fire had claimed the snack and lodging facility of the Vatican Express Travel Company in Bamenda, further adding to the company's and community's distress. But while all of this is happening, the colonial government is not even having a field day. Reports have it that they are struggling to seek for funds. The other day, we reported of some borrowing from the EU, and we wondered what they would use that money to do. Well, today, a bill has been tabled at the Colonial National Assembly for the reduction of 3,000 to 30,000 francs CFA on salaries in the Cameroons. The question is this a move for more money to sustain the military option to the war in Amazonia, or is just a move to capitalize and take from the people as usual. Well, this is a change that is about to take place in the Cameroons if the Colonial National Assembly votes for it. This is an annual tax on the horizon. It will range from 3,000 to 30,000 francs CFA on salaries. We learned. But indeed, the Colonial Minister of Finance presented a draft law on local taxation to the Colonial National Assembly. This is one of the 100 bills tabled for the November 2024 session. The La République du Cameroon government is considering a local development tax collected in return for basic services and benefits provided to the population. In particular, public lighting, sanitation, household waste collection, ambulance operation, water supply, and electrification. The process of the local development tax are devoted as a priority to financing infrastructure. Once adopted, the bill will bring into force the tax that will be levied on the basic salary of workers in the public and private sectors. This will be between 3,000 and 30,000 francs CFA per year, depending on the different cases. A total deduction of 3,000 francs will be made each year from the basic salaries of workers between 62 and 75 francs, compared to 6,000 francs for basic salaries between 75,000 and 100,000 francs. For those two categories of employees, the monthly deduction will be 250 and 500 francs respectively. For basic salaries between 100,000 francs and 125 francs, an annual deduction of 9,000 francs will be applied, or 750 francs each month, compared to 12,000 francs per year for basic salaries between 125,000 and 150,000 francs, corresponding to a monthly deduction of 1,000 francs CFA. And so the largest deduction will be made on monthly basic salaries above 500 francs, for which the annual deduction for the local development tax will be 30,000 francs or 2,500 francs each month, which indicates investor or Cameroon. Now, this is an extended consequence of the ongoing war in the Ambazonia. The La République du Cameroon adopted a military option that is draining her finances in acquiring war weapons and armored vehicles against the people of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia with genuine marginalization grievances. And these are the same people that are being owed for months and for years. But when we talk about tragedy and pains, we should not think that only Ambazonians are suffering. Even those who are citizens of the Cameroons, La République du Cameroons, are also going through difficult situation. A typical example is this report where a devastating incident occurred on Wednesday, November 27th, at ÉCOLE, the PRIMAIRE Application de KRIBI Center, a primary school in Cameroon, where Mdiba Rachel, a dedicated teacher, suddenly passed away in her classroom while preparing her lesson notes for the day. Well, according to eyewitnesses, Rachel had mentioned a headache to a colleague shortly before her death. Despite this, her husband revealed that she had no prior medical issues and was in good health, having recently celebrated her 50th birthday. The school community is in shock and mourning the loss of their beloved teacher. The incident has sent a wave of sadness throughout the school, with students, pupils, teachers, and staff struggling to come to terms with their sudden loss. Rachel's body has been taken to the morgue of the regional and next hospital in KRIBI, where an autopsy will be performed to determine the cause of the death. This incident highlights the consequences of poor governance, including the struggles faced by teachers who have been owed for years. The Cameroonian government has been criticized for its handling of teacher salaries and working conditions, leading to widespread protests and strikes in recent years. The school is currently awaiting the official funeral program and is expected to hold a memorial service to honor Rachel's memory and legacy. Well, at this point, we can say teacher's reward is officially in heaven, because in La République du Cameroon, it's only suffering that can be gotten. Well, Let's get to the news across other African countries. Well, a Zimbabwean court has released opposition leader Jameson Timber and 34 activists after convicting them of unlawful assembly. Timber, the interim leader of a faction within the Citizens Coalition for Change Party, received a 2-year suspended prison sentence, while the activists were given lesser, fully suspended sentences. This comes after they were detained for over 5 months. The charges stem from their arrest at Timber's residence in Harare during a gathering reportedly intended to commemorate the African Union's Day of the African Child. Authorities initially accused the group of disturbing the peace and inciting violence, but the court dismissed the peace-related charges in September. Critics, including Amnesty International, have labeled the detentions as part of a larger pattern of political repression under President Emerson Mnangagwa. The organization also called for investigation into allegations of torture during police custody. Mnangagwa's administration, much like the previous regime of Robert Mugabe, faces ongoing accusations of on using unlawful enforcement and the judiciary to suppress dissent. In Burkina Faso, the communications watchdog has summoned the editor of the Observatoire Pagal, a leading newspaper, and journalist over an article discussing military promotions in neighboring Mali. The article titled Malian Armed Forces, Loads of General, criticized the growing ranks of high-ranking officers under Mali's junta. The High Council for Communication claims the piece violated laws and journalistic ethics. The summons comes amid rising tension in the region as Mali's ruling junta recently cut the signal of Joliber TV News after a political figure criticized Burkina Faso's military leaders. Press freedom in the Sahel region continues to deteriorate, with journalists facing increased risks of censorship and threats. Reporters Without Borders has raised concerns about these growing challenges to media independence, but incidentally highlights the persistent challenges of governance, press freedom, and human rights in Africa. In Zimbabwe, the use of judicial and police powers against opposition voices reflects ongoing struggles for democratic space. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso and Mali, there are increasing restrictions on journalists signal a shrinking environment for critical discourse. This case underscores the importance of upholding freedom of expression and the rule of law across the continent. Let's see news across the globe. The West focus on high-tech military equipment has left it unprepared for a large-scale war. According to retired Australian Army Major General Mick Ryan, for decades, Western militaries have prioritized quality over quantity, investing in specialized and advanced gear. However, this approach has resulted in insufficient stockpiles of weapons and ammunition, leaving the West vulnerable in the face of a prolonged conflict. Ryan notes that Russia and China, on the other hand, have been stockpiling weapons in preparation for a large scale war. This disparity in preparedness has significant implications for the West's ability to respond effectively in the event of a major conflict. The idea that quantity has a quality of its own suggests that having a large supply of weapons and ammunition can provide a significant advantage on the battlefield. Even if the equipment is not the most advanced, this highlights the importance of balancing quality and quantity in military preparedness. What has Trump chosen Ukraine? President-elect Donald Trump has nominated Kate Kellogg, a retired lieutenant general and former national security advisor, to serve as special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. This move is seen as a key step in Trump's promise to end the ongoing war in Ukraine on his first day back in office. As special envoy, Kellogg will play a crucial role in negotiating with Russia and Ukraine to bring an end to the conflict. Kellogg has expressed his support for tough negotiations to achieve this goal. His experience as a national security advisor and his military background makes him a strong candidate for this role. It's worth noting that Trump's promise to end the war in Ukraine on his first day in office is ambitious and it's unclear how he plans to achieve this goal. The situation in Ukraine is complex and the resolution will likely require careful diplomacy and negotiation. Meanwhile, a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon has officially taken effect, aiming to bring an end to the recent hostilities in the region. However, despite this development, many residents of Israel's northern communities remain resistant and hesitant to return to their homes. Those who have chosen to stay behind express skepticism about the ceasefire, questioning its ability to bring about lasting peace. Their concerns are rooted in the history of tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, as well as the frequency of ceasefire agreements in the past that have ultimately failed to hold. With that news, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight, but before we go, let's go through the highlights of today. Right, today on Undaunted, we told you that fire has destroyed the St. Luke Church that happened during the Christ the King feast. We also told you that La Republique du Cameroon is seeking for money from all angles and at all costs. Tonight on Undaunted, we brought to you Colonial Governor's rubbishing House of Chiefs and halting plans against the Heritage Festival. While tragedy struck at the École Première d'Application du Kabyle Center. While on the African scene, we told you that opposition leader freed amid allegation of repression, while the West is unprepared for large-scale war due to lack of ammunition and stockpiles. That was coming from the news across the globe. And that's it for tonight on Undaunted, bringing to the news untold stories. On behalf of the technical crew on board, tonight we say good night and God bless.